This is Glenn Hauser with World of Radio 2254. World of Radio is a listener-supported public service program about communications around the world. On this edition, recorded August 1st, Andorra, Australia, Bolivia, Brazil, Bulgaria, Canada, Canary Islands, Chile, Cuba, Egypt, Ethiopia, Europe, Finland, France, Germany, Indonesia, International Vacuum, Korea North, Mexico, New Zealand, North America, São Tomé, Solomon Islands, USA, Vanuatu, Venezuela, OTH Radar, and the Propagation Outlook. Standard disclaimer. Christian Guibaudot in France forwards news to the British DX Club that the old Radio Andorra transmitter is about to become a museum. 251 kiloyears has been allocated to develop the museum, which will open next summer. It's dedicated to the memory of Radio Andorra and tell through augmented reality the story of this broadcaster, to delve into the history of this station and of broadcasting in Andorra. Zacharias Yangas in Greece says, the second harmonic of the low-power shortwave radio Australia 4835 can be heard on 9670 via remotes in Hunter Valley and Forster, and most of southeastern Australia. There's a second frequency, sometimes with a different program, 2310. Of course, 9670, that harmonic, not to be confused with Channel 292 Germany. Major DX news erupted this week, thanks to Rafael Rodriguez Serri in Colombia about Bolivia. Thanks to info from a Cuban DXer, Jose Ibrahim Pose, I was alerted at 0150 UT to a signal on 6145 with a Spanish program Viva la Vida. At 0203 the ID was Radio Betania and a time check for 22 hours. It says it's regulated by the ATT, Bolivia's Telecommunications Control Agency. He found that Radio Betania operates on FM 93.7, and the shortwave signal was parallel to their stream via Facebook. Now, the Bolivian station that operated before on 6145 was Radio Juan 23 from San Ignacio de Velasco, but it has no streaming. He says, I found info from a communication service provider that last March they were working on the 6145 antenna of Radio Juan 23. It continued with Catholic programming and music at 0250. 0415 UT, July 28th, I was hearing music on 6145, about equal to the storm noise level, certainly something new, since nothing else is scheduled on 6145, except a Chinese station, but that would not be audible until much later before our sunrise. I posted that news immediately to the World of Radio I.O. group, and many other logs ensued. Walt Sumner in BC measured it on 6144.978. Manuel Menes in Spain was getting it. He thinks they're using the inactive Juan 23 transmitter from 0445 to 0640 on the 28th of July with religious comments and IDs as Radio Betania 93.7. Ron Howard in California was also hearing it. After 0450 UT, mostly non-stop religious songs and occasional announcements. Roger Tower in Germany says their main website is radiobetania.com. That's Betania. That's Spanish for Bethany. However, it was not to be heard the following night, or 2 or 3. We were all checking, such as July 29th, from 0139 and 0416th. I was hearing no signal on 6145, nor were others. And still nothing for sure as of UT August 1st. I say the sudden appearance might have been a proof of performance. It could have been a one-off. On that first and apparently only night it was on the air, it may have been all night, Zacharias Yangas was hearing it as late as 0835 or 0840 via remotes. Anyhow, a frequency to keep checking in case it does come back, 6145 from Radio Betania, Bolivia. We have some strange stations to report from Brazil, probably not licensed. Zacharias Yangas was hearing on 5995.87 via the Brasilia remote on 13 UT July 27th with Brazilian music. Ron Howard points out that more than 5 years ago there was a report of a station in Brazil on 5995 from Rodolfo Grimm, a recording of excerpts of the 1990s from an authentic São Paulo station, Radio Scala FM. That's S-C-A-L-L-A. Then on July 30th, Zacharias Yangas via Brazilian remotes was hearing apparently the same ID on 6135.05. In fact, it's listed in the IB roster, heard at 11:15 with unstable modulation and carrier. Apparently it's a pirate relaying other stations. And in fact, at 11:38, he heard an ID for the ELA radio network. Beautiful music radio. Yes, that was in English. And another odd Brazilian frequency, 9990. On July 29th at 1950 to 2015, José Ronaldo Xavier in Paraíba reports hearing a Radio Voz Evangélica in Ceará. Musical programming, gospel songs, and some preaching. Fair reception of an unofficial station in the state of Ceará, but the transmitter site unknown. And yet another Brazilian pirate previously reported, Radio Ameixinha. Dan Robinson now has got a QSL reply via email. It says a wonderful EQSL and other photos from the operator of Radio Ameixinha, heard on 7550 via remotes in Maryland and on his own receiver nearby. A very friendly reply. The operator said he was running only 100 watts, and he is near but not in the city of Mirandópolis. He says, I intend to continue broadcasting as long as possible, including in September, when the station will do a 1 year of daily broadcasts, and will try to do something live on the 12th of September. I try to maintain a regular schedule, daily broadcasts, at least until 02 UT. He's on Twitter, or X, as Radio Ameixinha, AMEXINHA, without an extra I in there, as well as the website radioameixinha.github.io/radio. Alan Holder on the Isle of Wight reports noise spurs from a faulty transmitter at Kostinbrod, Bulgaria. On July 27th, for several days, I have noticed noise spurs on a number of frequencies, traced as coming from Bulgaria. The fundamental is 9490, with Arabic for the Middle East of Bible Voice Broadcasting. That's at 1710 to 1730 on Monday and Wednesday, and 1730 to 1745 daily. The spurs seem to be white noise. It interferes with KBS on 9515, Taiwan on 9545, and also on 9450, 9470, and 9570. The interference disappears when the Bulgarian transmitter goes off the air. So he emailed the operator's spaceline about the problem on July 28th, but so far got no reply. However, the noise spurs were no longer being heard, so they may have found the fault and repaired it quickly, or more probably switched to an alternate transmitter. In IRCA August 1st, Gilles Michaud in Laval, Quebec, says after a year off the air, CJEU 1670 in Gatineau, Quebec, is back on the air. He says they had tried a couple of months ago, but there was so much hum that they went back off the air the next day. This time they've been back for at least 3 days. They had to send the transmitter back to the manufacturer for repair, they told him. He says, I wonder how many of their regular listeners noticed. Their target audience is kids. What kids nowadays would know how to tune an AM radio? Canary Islands, Non. Ian Bigger reports to the British CX Club on July 28th, the relay of the Tenerife Coast Gold station seems to have been reactivated on 1494 kHz medium wave, heard Sunday, July 28th around 02 UT, with non-stop holders and IDs. This, however, is probably coming from Ireland. Lucio Otávio Bobrovic in Brazil reports a number of logs of RCW, Radio Compañía Worldwide, the pirate in Chile, from July 21st to 26th on 6925 with a football game, in Spanish, of course, at 2346, relaying some other station. It was simultaneously on 7535, but not in parallel, transmitter of 40 watts. And a number of other logs on 7535 with 100 watts. July 21st, more football at 2352. A program about health at 2235 on the 22nd. Spanish music on the 23rd at 2348. And a news program on the 26th at 2253. July 26th at 0325. There was jamming audible underneath 5800 WRMI in Spanish mentioning communist and dictatorial regimes. That hour is Freedom Synergy Radio. It's a pro-Taiwan service in Latin America based in Miami. It received quite a bit of publicity when it started over 4 years ago, but nothing about it much currently. As far as I know, this makes 5800 the only frequency Cuba bothers to jam from WRMI besides 9955. All of Radio Cairo's scheduled frequencies from Egypt are in the 9 megahertz band, but it's hard to hear them. Zacharias Liangas in Greece was checking out many of those which are scheduled on the 25th, 26th, and 27th of July, and was hearing some carriers with modulation of various qualities on 9410, 9900, 9479.96, which might have been something else, 9470, 9409.99, and 9480. Various times between 15 and 20 UT, many of them with a hum. Ethiopia and Non, Wolfgang Büchel notes jamming around 15425. July 23rd, about 15 kilohertz wide, sounding like DRM, but it's against the program for the Oromo in Ethiopia via IRRS, transmitter site believed to be Romania. This lasted from 1500 until 1545. European Pirates, Roberto Pavanello in Italy reports 15105, July 28th at 0840. Radio Cupid with an English ID and music good reception. Radio Space Shuttle notified us they would be active on 9290. So July 29th, Walt Someny of NBC was hearing a very weak, smudgy carrier on 9289.637 at 0653. Better with some audio at 0702. Also heard with the same offset via the remote in Holland, but it seemed to go off around 0745, says Zacharias Liangas. There was some radar noise around 9300. The low-power Finnish station, Radio Blacksmith Knoll, KNOLL, reported by David Koenig, July 27th at 1805 UT on 6120, with a song about the station. More than a mere jingle, a distinctively lyrical presentation in English, including the evergreen classic, Yes, We Have No Bananas, and a couple of minutes of Finnish around 1825, still going past 1835. His best remote reception was via northern Sweden, and there's a 2-minute clip of it at his excellent website under Finland, intervalsignals.net. John Collins in Birmingham reports some special event ham stations for the Paris Olympics. On the 40-meter band LSB, call signs like TM76JO or TM65JO, that of course meaning Jeux Olympiques. Frequencies such as 7158 LSB or 7149 at 1925 and 2125 UT. The one on 7158 was going to be active until August 11th. So some such activity in the evenings on the 80-meter ham band. Via Caricalia, we have a schedule of the program called Jazz AM via channel 292 Germany on 9670 for 1 hour each, Saturday, August 3rd at 21. And the following 3 Sundays, August 4th, 11th, and 18th at 10 and at 21 UT. Back upon Asilomar State Beach, California, Ron Howard reports, RRI, Nabiri Program 1, Indonesia, 7289.93. On July 26th from 0810, mostly fair reception, easy listening songs. At 0852, started playing some Middle Eastern or Islamic influenced music and singing. Then at 902 to 912, the Islamic segment, including the Sunset Call to Prayer and more easy listening songs, until off at 0928. Also heard on August 1st, at 0833 till suddenly cut off at 0903. That's just 3 minutes after the Islamic segment started. We are amid World of Radio 2254, a non-commercial service like our website, worldofradio.com, for which voluntary financial support is very much appreciated. By money order or check on the U.S. Bank to Glenn Hauser, P.O. Box 1684, ENID, OK, 73702. Or via PayPal, not necessarily in U.S. funds, to WORADIO, @yahoo.com. Dateline International Vacuum from RustyX, the fifth-generation design bureau, in cooperation with Roscosmos, plans to launch up to 1,000 small satellites into Earth orbit to ensure continuous Internet of Things in hard-to-reach regions of the planet such as the poles. The Internet of Things is a system that unites technical devices into a single network within which they can communicate and exchange information without human intervention. This is apparently based in Novosibirsk. Stu Forsyth in New Zealand asked me if I have any idea what this could be. On 3560 kHz from 1840 UT, classical music, lots of operatic big stage music, a big chorus, pauses between numbers and short announcements, maybe a Slavic language. No idea where it's coming from. I did not either, but we soon had many replies on the World of Radio group monitoring the next day, such as Arthur Posner heard Spanish going to French at 2000 UT. It's from North Korea. Tony Pavic says, sounds like another screw-up by Voice of Korea. Brian Clark in New Zealand says that frequency rang a bell. Voice of Korea used to be on there for DRM tests, and on 31 July they were in AM at 1804 and an English ID of Voice of Korea. And Arthur Posner says English started at 2100. Audio modulation not that good. Also a strange distorted signal reported from Voice of Korea. Ricky Dong in Alberta says July 30th at 1300 on 11710. Then via remote in Japan, Stephen Luce in Texas says at 1325 a loud noise on 11710 and 9435, no program audio. Seems to be a feed failure to the VOK transmitter site. Tony Pavic in BC checked their frequencies between 13 and 14 UT. Trace of a weak carrier on 13760, a carrier on 12014.9. Almost DRM-like blob, but not DRM on 11710. On 9435, a carrier that had spurts of audio at 1301 for a few minutes and then nothing. José Ronaldo Xavier in Brazil reports 2 clandestines for North Korea via the Uzbekistan transmitter site on variable frequencies. Usually they're offset to the minus side. Saturday, July 27th at 2000 on 7620, Radio Free North Korea. And then at 2015 to 2027, North Korea Reform Radio on 11570. From Radio Insight via Dennis Gibson, Mightier 1090 XCPRS Tijuana gives way to Spanish Catholic programming. As of August 1st, En Frecuencia says the Tijuana-based Monte Maria Radio begins operating, promoting the launch of their programming on the station. The current sports brand had debuted in August 2020 after the out-the-window advertising owner announced he had initiated a 5-year lease on the signal in April 2020 from owner Andres Bichara. 1 year after, Broadcast Company of the Americas lost its lease to operate the Mighty 1090. No one involved in the Mightier 1090 has commented on the potential demise of the station. Tim Hall says, as an AM-only listener, I shall miss those horribly translated Mexican government PSAs that XCPRS and other English-language AM and FM stations run all day. After 40 years, and despite the advent of tools like Google Translate, the translation on those PSAs is somehow still getting worse. Then Tim Hall found on Facebook that Monte Maria Radio would only be airing on XCPRS 16 to 21 hours per day, implying that their locally produced sports and talk programming might continue on weekday afternoons and evenings, such as noon to 7 p.m. local time, but would definitely be Spanish Catholic during the most DXable overnight hours. And by the way, if you hear Spanish sports play-by-play on 1090, it's KMXA in Colorado with the TUDN network. What happens on 1090 in Tijuana might have a bearing on 690. Ben Dawson says 690 employs a directional pattern design which does not perform nearly as well as the original one designed by the late Dick Beebe and implemented when the station was operated by the Texas entrepreneur Gordon McClendon. Dick's design suppressed high-angle radiation toward Los Angeles so that the skywave and ground wave signals did not interfere with each other, a fade zone, resulting in a usable signal in most of the Los Angeles basin. Brian Clark points out news on the Radio New Zealand website. It went live on August 1st with its new Pacific shortwave transmitter, replacing its old one that dates to 1989. Pacific High Commissioners and Foreign Affairs Minister Winston Peters met in RNZ House in Wellington to mark the launch, while another delegation from RNZ was at the transmitter site in Rangitaiki near Taupo. It was very important back then, but it's still seriously important now, Peters says, referring to when RNZ Pacific started. New Zealand and China are now the only two countries providing a shortwave service to the region, with Australia's ABC pulling out in 2017. Peters said, "Shortwave is the most certain system there is to make sure that in a crisis, tsunami or cyclone, we can get through to them. The $4.4 megadollar project, RNZ has installed a new Swiss-made Amphigon shortwave transmitter, capable of both digital and analog signal, to replace the old one." Strangely enough, on the same day, August 1st, when I try to find their shortwave schedule, it's no longer on their website, at least not where it used to be. Anyhow, whichever transmitter it may be, 9700 is their main signal during our overnight hours. Alex Robert in Paraíba State, Brazil, reports hearing an NID station on 6870 USB at 0110 UT July 28th, playing pop music in English. It so happens that corresponds with logging in HF Underground of a North American pirate, making it all the way to Brazil, it seems. Radio 48 on Mix Radio International. No reports lately of station YHWH, the Antichrist pirate, on 7475, but Ron Howard does report it. July 28th at 0325 until off at 0337. About closing down Voice of America relay sites such as São Tomé, 1530 and shortwave all gone. Kai Ludwig says shortwave radio has been dying for a very long time, and medium wave is not very far behind, but still they decided to rebuild the second 1530 kilohertz mast after it crashed in 2016. Not that this incident interrupted transmissions for more than a short time, it just rendered the antenna omnidirectional, so they lost a few decibels toward the mainland. How many millions of U.S. taxpayer dollars had been wasted by restoring the full facility and shutting it down a mere 2 years after completion? The same question applies to the restoration of the Tinian antennas, assuming that it will very soon close as well. And Ben Dawson replies, "The really unfortunate and costly decision was to build a brand new and lovely medium wave site at Poro, or San Fernando La Union, in the Philippines, and then shut it down only a few years later." Victor Gunatilaka in Sri Lanka replies, "Heartbreaking news for short and medium wave listeners. The transmissions were widely heard from São Tomé on 1530 kilohertz, a good catch here in South Asia. It was a pleasure to hear their 60-meter band outlets. Goodbye, São Tomé. Your QSLs will be treasured. Like Iranavila in Sri Lanka, due to the proximity to the sea, corrosion takes its toll and repairs cost much, and with dwindling shortwave use, it's too expensive to maintain it. End of an era and a beautiful station." Ron Howard in California reports Solomon Islands 5020 SIBC, August 1st at 8:01 to 8:31 UT. The audio level was well above normal. Intro of Calliope music, news in Pidgin. Many items about celebrating Guadalcanal Province Day, the 40th anniversary since attaining self-governance in 1984. And nice to hear they still give IDs as Voice of the Nation. Doug Brown in London, Ontario says, the disabled WWVB on 60 kilohertz is starting to show its effects. I have 3 radio control clocks in the house, and every one of them is out of sync with real time and with each other. Tomorrow I'll set all the clocks outside for a couple of hours and see if that works. He's 1,235 miles from Fort Collins. After a reliable spell on 9960 until 0658 UT, Radio Vanuatu was missing as of August 1st. Or was it to be heard on 7260 previously used, and several monitors agree it was not to be found on any of its known frequencies, such as 3945 or its harmonic switch months propagated 7890 and 11835, or maybe 5040. The past week making random but not very thorough checks of 4940. In the evenings and late at night, I've not been hearing any signal from Estación 4940, such as July 25th at 0128 or 0630. It's thought to be from south-central Venezuela, but of questionable legality. However, Bill McDavitt reports from Florida to the British CX Club strong signals from Estación 4940 Venezuela, on later than normal with a nice ID followed by a religious tune at 0945 UT and an abrupt shutdown at 0950. He made this recording.
Ser valiente significa nunca permitir que el temor influya sobre tus acciones.
Nuestra señal en banda de 60 metros. Estación 4940 llegando a toda Venezuela.
That was on August 1st. There seems to be more and more over-the-horizon radar clickery, perhaps something to do with Russia's imperialist war on Ukraine. Here are some of the frequencies and times I've noticed it lately. Interfering with Turkey on 11785, roughly running 11780 to 11795, July 28th at 2200. Interfering with World of Radio via shortwave Radio Germany 6160, July 28th at 2136, covering roughly 6158 to 6180. July 28th at 2357, it was covering 9959 to 9984, barely missing WRMI but hitting WWCR on 9980. Then July 29th at 2235, I heard it intruding on 11928 to 11955 until cutting off at 2237.5. This includes the frequency of the Saudi buzzer 11935, but this was something quite different, a different sound, and that's narrowband by comparison. And another July 30th at 0146 from 7462 to 7479. Interfering with nothing at the moment, but that could be a problem if YHWH showed up later on 7475. About World of Radio via our webcasting affiliate Pirate Radio, Pirate. They made some changes. Gary Drew says, World of Radio is now broadcast at various unscheduled times as part of their 24-hour sustaining service. There is no longer any set time. The automation is on a 38-hour loop on weekends and goes into shuffle mode on Monday through Friday. Anyhow, you can reach their streaming for World of Radio and everything else at this URL, pirateradio.bravesites.com/live-stream. The propagation outlook from SWPC issued July 29th. ANKNSE is expected to peak at 72 and 7 on July 30th, 35 and 6 on the 31st, and then declining to 5 and 2 starting August 2nd through 21st. Solar flux expected to decline from 210 August 1st to 180 by August 19th. These strong storm levels predicted were in response to multiple coronal mass ejections starting July 26th through 28th. With many thanks to all our contributors and stations, inviting you to hear me again next week. Glenn Hauser concluding World of Radio 2254 with a standard disclaimer.